small, peaceful town was thrown into turmoil when two police officers, drunk on their self-perceived authority, decided to welcome a stranger in a way no one could have anticipated. They tied the man to a lamppost, turning him into a spectacle for the curious and indifferent eyes of the entire community. What they didn't know, however, was that this man was their newly appointed sheriff, the one destined to change everything. What happens when justice confronts the abuse of power? Stay tuned, as this story will take you from surprise to outrage. If you enjoy tales rich in emotion and meaning, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next twist. The story begins. My name is Ethan, 54 years old, and I've seen my fair share of ups and downs. I recently moved to a small, remote town in South Carolina to take on the role of sheriff. This isn't my first time in law enforcement. I've witnessed just about everything in my career, but this place, this town, has an atmosphere unlike any other. Everyone seems to know everyone, and it's painfully clear they aren't too keen on welcoming someone new. It didn't take long to notice that the police officers here have their own set of rules, if you catch my drift. On my first day, before officially stepping into my role, I decided to take a walk around to get a feel for the place. Wearing an old baseball cap and a weathered jacket, I blended into the crowd, posing as just another passerby. I walked into a local cafe, the kind of place that looked older than I am. The moment I stepped inside, I felt a dozen pairs of eyes fixate on me. The unspoken message was crystal clear. You don't belong here. Two officers sitting in the corner erupted into laughter over something, but I had no doubt. I was the punchline. They sneaked glances at me, as if they had already written me off as either irrelevant or worse, someone worth mocking. Their badges gleamed under the dim light, but their demeanor lacked any trace of professionalism. I ordered a cup of coffee, maintaining a calm exterior as I waited to see what they'd do next. I had no intention of revealing who I was just yet. This was a reconnaissance mission of sorts. But as I reached for my coffee and turned to leave, one of them yelled across the cafe, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Hey, old man, you lost or something? Sure don't look like you're from around here." I stopped mid-turn, my face emotionless. I'm just passing through. Clearly, they didn't buy it. One of them, the lanky one with a smug grin, gave me a mocking glance. Then keep passing. Strangers don't last long around here. Got it? I shrugged and walked out, but I could feel their eyes burning into my back as I made my way down the street. A sense of foreboding told me that this new job would be far more than just paperwork and meetings. The next morning, I decided to go for a run outside town, a chance to clear my head and get a better feel for the area. The air was crisp, the surroundings peaceful, and everything seemed perfectly normal. That is, until I reached the halfway point. The sound of a patrol car pulling up beside me broke the quiet. Sure enough, it was the same two officers from the cafe, Colton and Travis, the dynamic duo. Colton, tall and wiry with messy blonde hair and his signature mocking grin, leaned out of the window and hollered, "Hey, athlete, you lost or something?" The way he said it made me feel like I had just trespassed onto private property, with an invisible no trespassing sign stapled to my forehead. Travis, his hulking partner with the kind of build that looked like it could bench press half the car, added, "Yeah, you sure you're welcome around here?" I kept my composure, slowing my pace slightly before replying, "Just out for a run." "Running isn't illegal around here, is it?" Travis smirked, the kind of smirk that said, "I know something you don't. Illegal? No. But strangers don't exactly get the warmest welcomes here, especially those who don't know how we do things." Before I could ask what he meant, both of them jumped out of the car. Colton strode up to me, standing uncomfortably close, and without a word, began rifling through my jacket pockets. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. They rummaged through my belongings, exchanging smug glances as if this was some sort of game. Finally, Colton pulled out a harmless piece of plastic from my pocket, his face lighting up with twisted glee. "Oh, look what we've got here," he sneered, holding it up like it was some sort of incriminating trophy. "This yours?" I stared at him, silent, refusing to take the bait. It was clear this whole encounter was premeditated. By this point, I was thoroughly fed up with their warm welcome. Still, I knew I had to remain calm. They had no idea who I was, and this certainly wasn't the right moment to reveal my identity. I let them haul me off, both gripping my arms as if I were some stray pet they'd just rounded up. No explanations, no questions, just rough handling all the way to the town square. They dragged me to a large lamppost in the middle of the square, where locals bustled about their usual morning routines. A few people stopped to watch, curiosity flickering in their eyes. Others barely reacted, as if this kind of spectacle was commonplace. Colton and Travis turned the scene into their own little performance, cracking jokes and exchanging jabs like they were hosting a comedy show. "Ladies and gentlemen," Colton announced with a theatrical bow, "we've just caught ourselves a big city troublemaker." Travis, ever the sidekick, chimed in, "That's right. Bet he's got all kinds of tricks up his sleeve." With exaggerated flair, they tied my hands around the lamppost, making sure I was on full display for anyone passing by. A few onlookers began pulling out their phones, recording the scene like it was the highlight of their day. Others simply smirked or shook their heads dismissively. I could see the delight in Colton's face as he soaked in the attention. He glanced around the crowd, his expression brimming with smug satisfaction. The twist of his smirk turned my stomach. He leaned in close, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear, dripping with mockery. "Looks like we've got ourselves a troublemaker, huh? Can't have people like you roaming free in our town." The absurdity of the situation wasn't amusing. It was unsettling. These two had gone so deep into their charade they didn't even care how blatantly wrong their actions were. I'd seen plenty of dirty moves in my life, but this was something else. I had to remind myself to stay composed. Let them dig their own graves. So there I stood, tied to a lamppost like some kind of public spectacle, while Colton and Travis strutted around, basking in the attention like they just nabbed the town's most wanted. Far from keeping it quiet, they reveled in the growing crowd's interest. Phones were out everywhere, capturing the scene from every angle. Some people giggled or shook their heads in disbelief. A few appeared genuinely curious, perhaps wondering, who is this stranger, and what did he do to deserve this? But their little performance didn't stay confined to the town. By the next morning, videos of the mystery man tied to a lamppost were all over the internet. Comments poured in like a flood, and wild theories spread like wildfire. Some claimed I was a trespasser who'd crossed some forbidden line. Others bluntly criticized the police. Who is this guy? And why does it look like a scene straight out of an old Wild West showdown? Questions kept piling up. What's going on here? What crime did this man commit? It wasn't long before local news caught wind of the story. Reporters began showing up, eager for their next big scoop, relentless in their pursuit. I watched as they maneuvered through the crowd, microphones poised to capture any response they could get. One journalist even stopped a passerby to ask, "What did he do? Did anyone see him commit a crime?" The man shrugged and muttered, "Who knows? Looks like those cops are just messing around." Meanwhile, Colton and Travis were basking in their moment of glory, strutting around the square like they owned the place. They posed, cracked jokes, and turned the whole ordeal into a circus, acting as if they were the town's biggest stars. If they had any inkling of how quickly this story was spiraling out of control, they wouldn't have been laughing. Watching everything unfold, I felt a spark of satisfaction. They were handing me exactly what I needed. A perfect stage they didn't even realize they'd built. The next morning, after a sleepless night, and trust me, it was the longest night of my life, my phone buzzed. The number on the screen was from headquarters. I knew instantly why they were calling. The news had reached higher-ups, and they weren't pleased. The small-town prank had snowballed into a full-blown scandal. Colton and Travis were about to face their worst nightmare. I walked into the police station, calm and composed. The weight of my uniform felt heavier than ever, but it carried a purpose greater than myself. This wasn't going to be an ordinary day. It was time to set the record straight. The badge on my chest gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights, and my neatly pressed uniform spoke of the authority it represented. I stepped into the main lobby, each stride deliberate and firm. The atmosphere was tense, like the eerie stillness before a storm. As expected, Colton and Travis appeared, laughing over some inside joke, entirely oblivious to the storm brewing around them. They didn't even bother to look closely at me. To them, I was still just a nameless nobody, an easy target for their childish antics. The moment they saw me standing there in full uniform, the smirks vanished from their faces. I could see the shock hit them like a freight train, their expressions slowly shifting to panic. I let the silence linger, watching as their eyes darted nervously, clearly searching for an escape. Finally, I spoke, my voice low but commanding. "We have a problem here, gentlemen." I locked eyes with both of them, and you two are at the center of it. Their faces drained of color as the reality began to sink in. This was a scenario they hadn't planned for, a game spiraling completely out of their control. Colton opened his mouth, stammering as if to say something, but I raised my hand to cut him off. "Don't say a word, Colton." My tone was ice cold. "I've seen enough to know exactly what's going on here." I stepped closer, letting my gaze pierce through them, and asked directly, "Do you two seriously not recognize your new sheriff?" The room plunged into an eerie silence, a silence that pressed down on everyone like a weight. I could feel the tension crackling in the air. It was as if the entire room was holding its collective breath, watching a slow-motion train wreck unfold before their eyes. Some of the other officers glanced at one another, their wide eyes revealing that they were finally piecing everything together. Colton and Travis stood frozen, their attempts at projecting confidence betrayed by their expressions. They knew they were cornered. I pulled out my phone and played a video, the video of their little performance from the day before. Every smirk, every mocking word was there, perfectly captured. I held the phone up high enough for everyone in the room to see. In case anyone here is still confused, this is what happened. These two thought it would be funny to publicly humiliate a stranger without even bothering to check who he was. The room remained dead silent. I could see shock give way to disgust as the other officers processed just how far Colton and Travis had gone. Colton made a move to speak, perhaps to defend himself, but then he did something I didn't expect. Instead of apologizing, he squared his shoulders, lifted his chin, and said with defiance, "Look, this is how things are done around here. Tradition, you know? We mess with newcomers to keep things in order." His tone carried a stubborn arrogance, as if he still believed he was in control of the situation. I raised an eyebrow, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Tradition? So, your tradition is to publicly humiliate people just because they're new in town?" Colton smirked, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for allies. "It didn't hurt anyone. Just a little harmless fun," he said, trying to sound composed, though the tension in his voice betrayed him. I glanced around the room, taking in the faces of the other officers. They were watching with expressions that ranged from disbelief to outright discomfort. It was clear they were starting to grasp the gravity of the situation. For Colton and Travis, reality was sinking in. Their little tradition was ending here and now. In just a few days, their stunt had spread like wildfire. This wasn't just a local town tale anymore. It had made headlines everywhere, from city talk shows to state news broadcasts. Reporters camped outside the station, cameras and microphones poised to capture every moment. The town had never experienced anything like it before, and to be honest, neither had I. The community was outraged. People who had once turned a blind eye or chuckled at Colton and Travis' antics were now demanding accountability. Protesters gathered outside the police station, holding signs and chanting for justice. It was like a storm, unpredictable, relentless, and it wasn't going to die down until Colton and Travis faced the consequences. I called the entire team into the main hall. This wasn't going to be a gentle reminder or a polite warning. It was time to draw a line in the sand. I scanned the room, letting my gaze settle on each officer one by one, ensuring they understood this wasn't just about Colton and Travis. From this moment forward, I began, my voice steady but firm. Any behavior that disrespects the people of this community will be dealt with immediately. No warnings, no second chances. The room fell into a heavy silence. The weight of my words pressed down on everyone, and they knew things were about to change. Dramatically, Colton and Travis stood in the corner, their faces pale as they realized their game was over. They were no longer the untouchable bullies they'd once been, and now everyone knew it. Without another word, I pulled 2 termination papers from my pocket and signed them right in front of everyone. Colton, Travis, hand over your badges. Your time here is over. The room was silent as I handed them the papers. There were no cheers, no applause, just a heavy quiet as they unpinned their badges, their faces etched with the weight of the consequences they'd brought upon themselves. The message was unmistakable. From this moment on, the officers of this town would serve and respect the community, not turn its people into objects of ridicule. After Colton and Travis left the force in stunned humiliation, the real fallout began. The prosecutor's office stepped in, launching a full-scale investigation into the so-called tradition these two had upheld. They started combing through every arrest, every questionable call that Colton and Travis had handled. And believe me, it didn't take long to uncover a mountain of complaints and accusations. People who had stayed silent for years finally began to come forward, sharing their stories, tales of humiliation, bullying, and worse. All of it done for the twisted amusement of Colton and Travis. It was as if a floodgate had opened. The entire town began to speak out, determined to expose every wrong that had been buried under years of fear and complacency. Before long, the courtroom became the focal point of the town, a place where people demanded justice, reparations, and answers. Colton and Travis weren't just facing the disgrace of being fired. Far more serious consequences loomed on the horizon. For the first time, the town witnessed a genuine example of accountability, and it was clear no one intended to let these two walk away unscathed. Standing outside the police station, watching the community come together in a way they hadn't in years, I felt a sense of purpose reaffirmed. This was why I'd taken this job. The town was ready for change, even if it meant enduring turmoil to get there. If I were Ethan, I would confront the injustice and abuse of power with the same determination and calm resolve he displayed. Standing up for justice is never easy, especially when facing deeply ingrained systems of corruption or indifference. However, it is a responsibility that cannot be ignored. In my own experience, I've had to stand for the truth and fairness in challenging circumstances. Whether it involved confronting bias, calling out unethical behavior, or defending someone who was wronged, I've learned that courage and persistence are essential. It's not just about what's right, it's about setting a standard for others to follow. If you've ever been in a similar situation, I'd love to hear your story. How did you handle it? What did you learn from standing up for justice? Your voice matters, and your experience could inspire someone else to act with integrity and courage. Share your thoughts or story in the comments. Together, we can encourage a community built on respect, justice, and accountability. If this story resonated with you, please share it with your friends and family. By spreading its message, we can take small but meaningful steps toward making our communities better for everyone. Thank you for following along with this story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring and thought-provoking tales. Together, we can build a world where respect and justice are upheld, and no voice is left unheard. Wishing you a day full of energy and positivity. Thank you for your support. Disclaimer: these stories are collected from various sources and are not representative of any individual or organization. They are shared with the intention of promoting human values and have been rewritten with the assistance of AI. If there are any inaccuracies, please forgive them with understanding. All the best to you in life.